Hello, this is Reverend Don Lewis coming to you from the beautiful metaverse, and more specifically from beautiful Danville, Illinois, homeland of the Corellian tradition. And this is Midday with Reverend Don. Welcome. And as you know, if you follow Midday with Reverend Don, you can type your questions or comments into whatever platform you happen to be watching on, and they will appear here in my chat room, which is on the screen. And I have just returned from the Lustration in Philadelphia. I thought I'd talk a little bit about that today. And of course, in the week before Lustration, I had a number of guest hosts taking my program, and I am hoping to be promoting many more personalities as we go forward with Corellian TV, um, and building back toward the level of programming we formerly had with Pagan World. But Lustration was a wonderful weekend. It was a tiring weekend, as they usually are, but a lovely weekend. Hello to Magical Mermaid in the chat room. It was nice to get to see Philadelphia. Of course, when you're in town for business, which Lustration basically is, you come and you do what you're there to do. You don't get to see everything, but we did get to see a little bit of the town, um, and that was very nice. And hello to Kayleen in the chat room. And Kayleen says, "I am looking forward to hearing about Illustration." It was a lovely time, and I think the thing, well, every Illustration, the thing that makes it special is the people who come. And it was really nice to at this Illustration see a number of people who have been with us for many years, but who we haven't necessarily seen an Illustration for some time, such as John Grimes and Angela Newell Grimes and their son Brendan, who have been with us for many, many years. But it was good to get to see them again in person at this Illustration. Magical Mermaid says, "How was the energy?" The energy was very high. Um, it was a wonderful event. There were a number of um, activities within it. As at all Illustrations, we had a number of initiations. That was beautiful. The ceremony itself was held at a local park, which was quite lovely. During the course of the weekend, we went to the Woodlands Cemetery in Philadelphia, which is where Charles Leland is buried. And if you're familiar with the history of the Corellian tradition, we have a connection to Charles Leland through Lydia Beckett. He is one of our philosophical ancestors. And so we went to his tomb to pay our respects. We also went to the tomb of Commodore Porter, who is considered the spiritual guardian of that cemetery, and paid our respects there in a traditional manner. And that was quite lovely. And it was a beautiful cemetery. It's very old. And so it has the very exuberant tomb markers of the 19th century. And in particular, that cemetery is famous for a number of garden tombs or garden graves, where a part of the grave is set aside to be a garden and maintained in that way. And these were quite lovely. And we got a few pictures of those. Throughout the weekend, I was, as I usually do, taking pictures of everything. Unfortunately, on Sunday morning, my phone fried. And so I don't have the large number of photos that I might have expected to have from the ceremony itself. But it was a beautiful ceremony. And I believe there is video coming. It was a very significant oracle, which I will be talking about in this half hour. All in all, it was a great time. Um, and yeah, the energy was wonderful. Um, One of the events was a series of team building exercises that people broke into groups and participated in. group activities where you try to do certain things together. It was very, very nice. Hello to Lynn Townsend in the chat room. And Lynn says, hello, I love exploring ceremonies. So much history to learn. Yes, absolutely. Um, it yeah, it was quite a lovely time. And at the tomb of Charles Leland, we left a number of offerings, including a corellium necklace that was left um, to honor his spirit, some flowers, and um, various libations were made, prayers were offered, etc. So it was a lovely time, and there were all of the normal things you have at lustrations. We did have the deeming ceremony, um, and um, it was very nice. And Circle's End Shrine under Autumn Stoneflower was up for deeming, and they did pass to proto temple status. No, they passed to full temple status. So Reverend Autumn is now a member of the Witan Council, and that was lovely. And yeah, so it was very cool. Now the Oracle, and now if you've never attended a lustration, you probably don't know what I'm talking about. The lustration ceremony itself, it's a ceremony of cleansing and blessing for the entirety of the tradition and its membership. And central to the ceremony is the Oracle of the Ancestors, which is brought through before the literal lustration or blessing is held. And the oracles tend to be very accurate. This year's oracle was rather strident. They have been for the last several years. Last year's oracle, if I remember correctly, was now is the time to do the work you've been called to do. Um, you're going to it's going to be a need at this time. This year's oracle, which has not yet been transcribed and published, but and I cannot certainly do not have memorized the entire oracle, but parts of the oracle were that. Oh, and hello to Janet Labulio in the chat room, and it's good to see you, Jeanette. And part of the parts of the oracle were it's time to stir the fire and make it burn bright, to speak truth to power, to be loud and proud, and effectively to fight the good fight, which certainly, to me, describes exactly where we're at and gives us a direction to be going. And I intend to basically follow the direction of that oracle as we go forward. To not be quiet about the important things that are happening at this time, but to focus on them and to focus on, as I always say, finding that next right thing and doing it. The Magical Mermaid says it's a time to release. Well, it certainly is a time to release, yes. It's a time to release. It's also a time to take sensible actions. It's a time, well, as the Oracle said, to speak truth to power and not to simply allow things to transpire. There are a lot of things going on in the world at present that are um, I think saying that they're unjust is not enough to describe them. There is a lot that really needs to be spoken truth to. Uh, the whole world is facing serious challenges at this time, and if we don't stand up to them, we will be rolled over by them. And I think that you'll hear me talking still more about political issues than I have in the past, still more about finding that next right thing to do and doing it. And, sometimes I wonder if I talk too much about these things, but people are still listening, so it must not be too much. Um, And I think that if we believe things, then we must also stand for them. And if we, well, I mean, if we look around the pagan community at the moment, issues of inappropriate behavior are very, very much being fought over at this time. Um, I often talk about the good and bad of our pagan community. I find our community often has difficulty telling the difference between what might be called he said, she said situations, where people are attacking each other because they've had some clash of personality or what have you, versus actual serious situations where you have things like legal judgments and screenshots of inappropriate behavior. And these things should be hard to argue against. And they're obviously not just he said, she said. They're very clear. And I think that we need to stand for what we claim we believe in and not support bad behavior. It is made difficult by the fact that we are in a community where people will make ad hominem attacks um, over situations that really are not uh, what they're trying to portray them as, and they will make false accusations. But when something is very clearly true, we need to pay attention to it. And I look at things like the Kenny Klein scandal and think that people should have paid a little more attention to that. Um, and I can think of a few others over the years. So expect me to be talking a little bit more about this kind of thing as we go forward. Expect Corellian TV to be talking a little bit more about this kind of thing. And expect us to be talking a little bit more about national and international politics, because we live in an era where Nazis are marching down the streets in some parts of the world, and this is not good. We live in an era where people are taking foolish actions in official capacities, and this needs to be spoken about. And I don't want to detour too far off of our lustration conversation today, but I think that these are um, the situations that are very important. Now, tomorrow, during this time, I'm going to have some announcements about the future of Corellian TV, the future of our programming, um, probably a little bit more about this subject. Um, so please tune in for that, and we'll be talking about where we're planning to go. But when we stop and think about where we've been, we have been doing this now since 2005. In fact, actually, well, yeah, at least since 2005. And we've been doing videography since before that. And we have had such adventures in doing that. But it's my hope that the biggest adventures are yet to come. And I hope that you will be joining us for those. We're hoping to expand our programming. We are hoping um, to focus on issues of, of moving forward. And Kayleen says the Nazi thing has been happening in Australia as well. The Oracle sounds similar to some personal work I have done in the last few days. Yes, absolutely. I am not surprised to hear that, because, honestly, the oracles of the last few years have been calling us to action. This one more than any of the previous ones. But obviously, if we're going to have a good future, we must do what we can do to bring that about. There are a lot of things we can't do. There are things that are beyond our reach. But what we can do we must do. And sometimes just living your truth in your own life is enough to make a difference. And when your own life involves things like broadcasting every day, it may make more of a difference than one might expect. Um, Truthfully, if the things that we claim we believe in are worth believing in, then we also must be prepared to live them. I'm not going to say that speaking truth to power is something that comes without danger. Um, and so for every person, they must decide what they can do. Um, the Oracle of the Ancestors really is directed toward all Corellians, but with that understanding that you must decide for yourself what you are able to do. Um, but as a tradition, we must do everything in our power. And, I've spoken before about what I consider to be practical actions and what I consider impractical actions. And obviously, I will tend to focus on the things I think are practical and will have an actual tangible result as we go forward. But that issue of stirring the fire, which was specifically stated in the Oracle, to make it burn more brightly, specifically says that, we can't just sit back and watch. Um, and Daniel says, hello to Daniel in the chat room, I see political extremism as social narcissism. People want to control how they receive approved love from society. And yeah, I certainly think there's a relationship in these concepts. Daniel goes on to say, just like a narcissistic partner. Magical Mermaid says, their own illusions and fear are their genuine enemies. And this is absolutely so. As we look at the political extremism that we see in the world, it is created by and maintained by fear. What was the Corellian peace campaign about? Fighting the powers of fear. It perfectly lined out what was happening. And if you've been following us for the 10 years of the peace campaign, you'll remember that this is exactly what we talked about when we started that. That people were being manipulated by the energies of fear and hatred. And how do we fight fear and hatred? Well, with love and with peace, but also with common sense and intelligence. If we look at certain aspects of the media, they're all about keeping people afraid, making them afraid, keeping them in a state of constant fear and anxiety, because they're very easily directed in that state. And finding ways to combat that is not an easy question when so many forces are focused on promoting it. But it is what we must do. Ed the Pagan on his page the other day had a post about that idea of constant fear versus internal peace. And I think one of the things that we must do is build our internal peace and not allow ourselves, no matter what the world looks like, to be overcome by fear to the point that we just stand back and watch. Now, Jeanette says, 10 years ago, yeah, I remember the conversation and on the videos. And that's what I was watching. Yes, we started the Corellian Peace Campaign 10 years ago, and it's been ongoing ever since. And I believe it's the 15th day of the month every month, the rolling peace prayer. We've had numerous people heavily involved in that, including the Reverend Sir Terry Ott, the Reverend Sir Colin Keller, and above all, Reverend Sir Rolando Camon, Apu Adman Agama, who have really heavily pushed the peace campaign and kept it going no matter what else was happening. And we really need to continue to push this and emphasize it still more. Um, we're watching things happen in the United States that most of us would never have expected could happen here. And we cannot simply watch it. We must be mindful of speaking truth to power. We must be mindful of how to set things on a better course for the future. I've often talked about how, at the turn of the age, you have to work through the negativity of the previous age and clear out as much as possible for the new age. And I do believe that's part of what's going on. But we must work for healing and rejuvenation. Um, and, we have been trained for this. We know how to do this. We have this ability. And we must focus on it. And Kayleen says it may be worth remembering past successes, such as Dion Fortune's work in World War II. And I was in a group doing similar work up to the end of the Cold War, and the fall of the wall came out of the blue. Yes, it's important to remember that when we have had conflict between, um, for want of a better way to put it, freer societies versus totalitarian societies, metaphysical people have often been involved. And there have been repeated successes in pushing back that negativity. Um, and yeah, that's kind of what we're looking at, isn't it? Just as Dion Fortune brought people together in World War II, um, those of us who can need to come together now. And it is worth bearing in mind that Dion Fortune was not willing to work with just anyone in doing that. But she did work with a wide range of people. And it's going to be very important to work with people who can direct the energy in good directions and have that focus without having it subjugated by nonsense, for want of a better way to put it. And hello to Nikki in the chat room, who says, "Hello, Lord Don. So good to see you." Thank you, Nikki. It's good to see you. So we've talked a little bit about the oracle from the Lustration and what it suggests for the future. And, overall, Lustration is always a wonderful event. I'd have to say, I think we had more children at this Lustration than any other I can remember. And if we have had as many in the past, we've certainly not had more. We had a lot of families, a number of children, and I consider that to be a wonderful sign for the future. It is good to see so many young people together in one place, particularly at Illustration, and to see us moving forward now. Daniel says, Dr. Jonathan Hagelin conducted group transcendental meditation sessions that claimed to have peaceful results residually. Yes, I'm aware of that. And, my take on this is that the more we do, the better off we're going to be. I remember reading about a similar event during the Vietnam War, which was intended to end the war, and they had it and it didn't. But that doesn't mean it didn't do any good. It took years to end that conflict. It took years to end the Second World War. It certainly took more than one ceremony on the part of a group of magic users to end that war. Does that mean we shouldn't do it? No. It means the more we do, the better off we are. A Magical Mermaid says we have to vibrate the world we want. Yes, we do. We have to be willing to stand up for that world. And, in a manner of speaking, what we're really doing here is we're facing our own shadow. And I would say to all of us, even if it doesn't seem like it's our own shadow, at some level it is. It's certainly humanity's shadow. And exactly what part of it might be our shadow, I mean, maybe it's merely the act of standing up itself that might be a shadow to us as individuals, but we need to do what we need to do to reach a good outcome. And what I am hoping to do, in addition to continuing to speak about this, is to offer progressive, practical um, suggestions of what to do in order to make a difference. Um, and a real difference, not a fantasy difference. Um, and Kayleen says one anti Vietnam War protest apparently applied for permission to levitate the Pentagon by 300 feet, but the answer they got back only gave them official permission for no higher than 8 inches, um, which actually shows a level of humor I would not have expected. But it does speak to how we need to keep our eye on practicality. Obviously, no one was going to levitate the Pentagon at all. That was not something that was going to happen. But bringing people together to focus on what needs to be done, bringing people together to protest for right action, bringing people together, uh, these things absolutely can be done. And in coming months, we'll be talking a lot more about that at Corellian TV. Now, I want to take a moment for a word from our sponsors. And thank you to our sponsor, Equinox Learning Hub. And I will be back again tomorrow. I hope to see you then. And for now, let us close with our prayer, as we always do. Divine Mother Goddess, Divine Father God, beloved ancestors, we thank you for all that you do for us in our lives, and we ask you to help us to find the next right thing to do, and to have the courage to do it. Help us to stand up, even in difficult situations, and to stand up for what is right. Help us to live the life we say we believe in, and to live the ideals we claim to hold. Beloved Mother Goddess, beloved Father God, beloved ancestors, we thank you with great love, and knowing you are always with us. From respect, we thank you for your presence, and may you be blessed now and always. And I thank you for your presence. May you be blessed now and always, and I'll see you again tomorrow.